Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another OSR tabletop live stream with myself, DM Bloodworth. Good to see everyone again. This was kind of an impromptu live stream. I wanted to wrap up some ideas that I had from the past week or so. As many of you may know, I have returned from vacation, but I, of course, contracted the dreaded virus that you sometimes take home from big congregations and such. And so at least this wasn't convention related. This was vacation related. But so I'm trying to recover from it, and hopefully I'm back to full swing within the next couple of days or so. What this has given me the opportunity to do, since I have been kind of quarantined in my own bedroom where my computer is. So I've actually had a lot of time to work on various campaigns that I'm looking to launch in the next couple of months. And it got me thinking that this would be a good topic for discussion here on the live stream. And that is, how to, kind of tips on creating new campaigns, especially if you're creating new campaigns for a new game system to either yourself or to your players that you're going to introduce to that new game system. But let me also begin with the first banner that I wanted to mention. And so I am giving out my prayers, for best health and prayers for a recovery to Frank Metzner. As many of you know, I am a big fan of Frank's, and I've gotten the distinct pleasure of meeting him in person and playing in his game and having long conversations with him over the years. And so he is currently suffering from kidney failure. He is putting up on eBay a number of his most cherished items of his personal collection, and if you can in any way support that, then that would be awesome. If I'm hoping personally that they do someone does a GoFundMe for Frank, whether it be a family member or Frank himself, and I would certainly back that and support that and boost that as well. So here's to again praying for Frank, hoping that he recovers and quickly recovers, and hopefully he gets the assistance, the medical assistance that he needs, for this. So I wanted to lead off with that, with just the best wishes for Frank. All right. So let me get to comments now. So hey, Mercurius, I'm actually, I was feeling, I was miserable yesterday. And that was the second day. And the first day that that line was bright, so I was like, all right, I definitely have it. The first day was very, very faint and, almost unnoticeable unless you really stared at it. The second day was boom, like that came up, and I was like, okay, I have it. And my younger daughter was the first to, test that positive, and she's had it for about 3 days longer than I. So hopefully she's coming out of that as well. And now my wife just tested positive too. So there's only 4 of us in the family. And as much as we try to isolate on different parts of the house, hopefully, knocking on wood, that my oldest daughter kind of avoids this. But, the chances are it's going to whip through, the whole family. But we seem to be handling it pretty well. It's not the first time as well. So that's somewhat of a benefit, I believe. And we will see. We'll get through the week and everything. I'm hoping to still run my Tuesday night game. I postponed last night's game Because I just didn't think that I would have it in me to go a 3 or 4 hour session. And, I want to try to keep this kind of tight to probably an hour, hour and a half or so. We'll see how much engagement we get during during this. If you want to join in on the chat on the topic of, tips for creating new campaigns, I am going to put that up here right now. And so there is the link if you do want to join. And I ask you to, please excuse my, occasional cough or, having to blow my nose. So, hey, Ducato, how's it going? The one benefit to being kind of computer born here is that I will be working on my Shadow Dark adventure for ShireCon. So looking forward to completing that conversion over. But I've also been putting a lot of time into my Fallout campaign, which is really what inspired me to do this live stream. Uriah, how's it going, man? Yeah, good. I'm feeling much better now. And that was just like a runny nose and an occasional cough and everything. I just started an antibiotic, so hopefully, hopefully it starts clearing up very quickly. I haven't tried any of the normal prescribed things because I didn't test positive until Friday night, and I won't get a chance to go to the doctor until tomorrow. So maybe they'll prescribe me that whatever it's called, Plasvid or something like that, which might help clear it up, or give me some other kind of a antibiotic. I'm just using amoxicillin, which is usually for like toothaches and things like that. Probably need something a little bit different. But anyway, so let's see. I have had twice, and my wife dodged the bullet both times. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm still hopeful that my oldest will be able to avoid it as well. She's been very, very careful, and she works, so it's a little bit more important. She just came back off of vacation as well, so it's kind of hard to unfortunately have to take off again if that should happen. But hopefully, like I said, she can avoid us and stay clear of 3/4 of the household. So let me get to the first banner, of the night. And so this is tips for creating new campaigns for new game systems as well. So kind of a combo here, because you can create new campaigns, and some of these tips will apply to creating just a generic new campaign for a game system that you're very familiar with, and your players are familiar with as well. Although there are some differences when you're combining up starting a new campaign for a new game system. And so that's what I really wanted to talk about. And again, if anyone wants to chime in and and join in that conversation, you're certainly welcome to do so. I will also focus on your comments during the course of this as well. And so I pretty much follow a step-by-step process when I am creating things, and when I'm just getting the concept or the idea in my mindset. And some of these have been very recent too. And when I get to that inspiration, I will focus in on that, that aspect of it as well. But to start off, my step one is very generic, right? Whether you're going to use a game system that you're very familiar with, or you're attempting to put together a new campaign for a new system that you have just acquired yourself, then assembling your components. All right. And I find that starter kits work best initially. I think that anytime you're introducing players to a new game system, starter kits are phenomenal for that purpose. And we have Uriah going to join in. Hey, how's it going, man?
How are you? Can you hear me fine?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome.
All
How's it
right.
going, man?
So good to see you. And
Yes, sir.
yeah, so starter kits, have you used any starter kits in your experience?
I have not really starter kits. I have purchased I got the Castles and Crusades white box set,
Okay.
and yeah, that's been cool to kind of pour over and get a different outlook of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, I tend to kind of piece things together, sort of piecemeal style.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I actually have I bought the starter kit. So I have the white box set of Castles and Crusades, and I also have their book bundle starter set. So like the
Okay.
player's handbook and the monsters and treasure, along with the what's it called? The
Castle
DM
Keeper set?
screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
the DM screen, the castle, like all
yeah.
that beginner stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, that's something that I also like to do. That's why I say initially I like starter sets because they really do trim the basic rules down and separate them onto separate pages and whatnot, for
totally.
easy display and easy distribution as well,
Hmm.
which is something that I like to do. I've also found that, like you mentioned, a DM screen or a GM screen, and Modifius is phenomenal with their screens because they will also give along with that a like a DM's or GM's starter guide
Hmm.
that tells you how to put together adventures in some cases, and from start to finish, like naming them and whatnot. They did that phenomenally well with the Conan 2D20, but even with Fallout, very similar thing, very very basic rules. Shadow Dark, even though it's not a starter kit, but it has all the rules you need
Hmm.
on 2 pages. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
double sided, but and I just print those out. I print them out front and back, and
Hmm.
I handed those out to each of the players at the table because it is a very new system for many people at
Hmm.
conventions, and to have this quick reference
Oh
is
yeah.
something that's really really important, and that's actually my second step. In this is to find and print or create, and I'll just throw that up there, to find and print or create the basic rules on a quick reference page so that you can hand it to the players. I mean, there's other
Hmm.
things like um, Professor DM's his Deathbringer game system. The whole system is on 2 pages.
Right.
So you can easily just hand that out to everybody. And
Hmm.
Nave has a very similar situation where the rules itself is a quick reference that you can just hand to the players, and they're ready to roll. At least with that,
Hmm.
before you even get to session zero. Um,
Right. I had a cool opportunity to talk to the author of Cairn,
okay.
The Cairn RPG, and he was actually kind enough to send me some books for the school that I work at. He was super cool. He's like, yeah, I'll send you some books. Cool thing about Cairn is it has on the back of the character sheet, it has like a rundown of the basic rules, and all of the rules
Oh,
fit
cool.
on that one character sheet. It's super cool.
Yeah.
And I did a similar thing. I actually got to play Shadow Dark with my 5th edition group yesterday. We had a great time. We had so much fun. I basically just sent them the quick start PDF, and
Right.
they were able to get a gist of it.
Hmm.
With some of the overlap that 5th edition and Shadow Dark kind of have, they were familiar with a lot of the rules already, so that made things a whole lot easier
Right.
to get us going.
Right. Um, yeah. And again, it's now I hear a lot about Karen. I actually don't have it. So that's something that I'm going to have to correct sometime soon, is to get a
Right.
copy of it, because so many different people, and not just content creators, like so many different people that I know that are kind of in my circle, you know they bring that game up all the time,
Hmm.
and it's one of those games that I never played back in the day. Whenever that was actually first came out, I have no idea about it. I think it goes back quite a ways, though. I think certainly the
I
80s, I believe.
I think we might be thinking of different games because the cairn that I'm talking about is actually built off of Knave. Knave is one of sort
Okay.
of the it's one of the stated inspirations in the book.
Okay. I Karen, I've been hearing for a long time though. So,
Maybe
um,
I don't know.
maybe it's, maybe I am conflating it with something else as well. But I hear a lot about it, so that's
Hmm.
something I will certainly look into. So yeah, so as we both said, finding either finding or printing just what you need to hand out to your players so that they can get a quick burst of this is the basic rules. That's all you
Hmm.
need to really start your play at the very beginning, and then you can build their capacity, for the game rules and actually go into the core rule books sometime thereafter. And that's one of the reasons why I really like D&D Back Me, right? So I really like the basic
Yeah,
expert
yeah,
and that because players only have to focus on levels 1, 2, 3,
right.
with that first book, and you just
Hmm.
keep everything else away from them and let them just focus on this. And I have a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, I think the rules cyclopedia is really the best." But once you hand that, they can look to see
Yeah,
what is my character
yeah.
going to be doing when they're level 30. All
Hmm.
right, and it's like that's just too much info to have at their fingertips, and they'll start looking too far ahead. I'd rather
Well,
just keep it really controlled.
if you have the kinds of players that are all about like system mastery, you may even fall into the trap where they digest the book so quickly they're like, "Hey, can we like just skip ahead to level
Yeah,
4 or 5 or something?"
yeah,
I have that happen all the time in my fifth edition game. Anytime I
yeah,
want to play a one shot, it's like, do we need to start at level 1? Like, is that really
yeah.
necessary? I'm like, well, it's a part of the experience. It's a part of the
Right.
game experience.
Yeah. I push back on that when someone will say, "Oh, well, we'll just start at fifth level or whatever."
Hmm.
It's like for me, I don't believe that you can really develop a character starting at any level but one.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Because then you got to be worrying. Well, what was my character doing for the last 5 levels that nobody experienced and everything, and you get into this, massive backstory
yeah.
that
Oh my
then you're going
goodness.
to feel like you have to accommodate. You
Yeah.
know, and this is perhaps like very cynical of me, but I always say like I like to start the character off at level 1
Hmm.
at the minimum age for their race and character class. So it's
Hmm.
like, so you might be a 16-year-old fighter. And all I'm trying to do there is limit the amount of backstory
Sure.
the player is going to be thinking about their character. I was like, no, no, you'll have your family background and you'll
Hmm.
have, maybe one or two things that you might have, encountered that gave you the motivation to become an
Yeah.
adventurer, but if you're a first level character, 3 sentences is enough of a back
Hmm.
history that's all we really need, to go forward. At the most 5,
Yeah.
and if a first level character is coming, players coming to my table with a first level character and a 3-page backstory, um, that's not getting looked at. I mean, I'll be perfectly
Yeah.
honest. It's like,
Oh,
yeah,
I think I remembered
yeah,
you said something. You may have commented it on a Facebook post, but you're like, if a player comes to my table with a binder full of backstory, the first adventure we're playing is the Tomb of Horrors.
yeah, yeah. That's what it was like. Yeah, it was like, yeah, and I'll never forget. I saw the one video where someone was talking about their experience, and they had this 8-page backstory,
Yeah.
and they were killed by this like a block of or like a
Hmm.
trap just
Yeah.
entering the dungeon, and they
Yeah.
were instantly killed by this thing, and it was like boom, they lasted all of 5 minutes, and
Hmm.
the person was like so distraught, like, oh, this can't happen, this is,
And there are countless examples of that. If you go on Reddit, if you go to any
mm,
like mainstream D&D subreddit and you just search character death, you find countless examples of people who were saying like, yeah, well, I put all this time and effort into making a character backstory, and my character died, to
Yeah.
some bullcrap. I
Yeah.
don't even know if I want to play the game anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
You're kind of doing it to yourself, so to speak.
Well, like a recent video, I think Eric Tenkar put it up there, and it was based on an article too. Is D&D or is role playing games for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is no. There is nothing that is for everyone.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's virtually nothing in that I can even think of
Mm-hmm.
that is for everyone.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
going to be some kind of an exclusionary effect
Yeah.
that prevents you from doing something. I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you're 4'9", the chances of you playing in the NFL,
Yeah.
are essentially nil. I mean, not even as a kicker, because you'll never get the
Mm-hmm.
distance that you're looking for. But that it's just one of those things where you have to be willing to say no. All right, and that's what a lot of people are just not used
Yeah.
to, is
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
told no. It's like,
I,
I
I,
don't
I
want to
had
be
I dealt with
generational about it, but
yeah I dealt with that with when I was bringing Shadow Dark to my 5e group.
mm,
I'm like, we're just going to use the core book options. We're not going to look at any of the scrolls and stuff, because I'd sent them, the website where they can generate a character. And they're
right,
like, well, I want to be a pit fighter. I want to be a warlock. I'm like, we're sticking to the core. We're
right,
sticking to the main thing.
yeah,
And it all worked out fine.
yeah,
It was simple enough. They were able to adjust and get past it.
yeah,
Kind of going back to what you were saying about D&D being for everybody. I think it might have been Pundit, RPG Pundit. Love him or hate him. He had a pretty good way of putting it. He said, RPGs are for anybody, not everybody, and that's an
yeah,
important distinction. I
yeah,
think that was kind of a cool thing that he said.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a fairly common distinction amongst people who know. What I'm
Yeah,
saying, that
yeah,
that are in the know, like I have some amount of experience with gaming in general. Have especially people that are game masters that have been doing it for even a short period of time. It's like one of those things you kind of pick up on very,
yeah.
very quickly. Is like not everyone is just ready to play well with others. Let's
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. So getting back to the starting at first level, it makes playing and leveling up feel hollow starting at higher levels. Yeah, it's which is another reason why I don't like milestone leveling either.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I like it to feel like a true achievement.
Yeah.
Hey O'Neill, how's it going? All right. And then we played CNC campaign last night, 41st session, and one of the PCs just hits 6th level, one is 7th level. Slower leveling and different XP charts for each class. My group is loving it. Yeah, and
Nice.
when I look at the comparison, as far as leveling up and really it comes to character development,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's important to me. I think that's what has been important to my players as well. Now you're in my Shadow Dark campaign, and we're only
Yeah.
in like week 5 or so of it, but I think that as you see the campaign goes longer and longer, you're all going to have a much better sense
Mm-hmm.
of each other's character as well, and kind of get into that that cohesion of the party, and that's another reason why, and you kind of mentioned it. I kept you guys to the core,
Yeah.
classes, and I said there has to be one of each core
Yeah.
class, and there's only going to be 4 players,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that very, very intentionally as an experimentation of both the system, because it is a new system to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see, well, how does just playing the 4 core work. And then I wanted it as an experimentation of cohesion to see how well, do these four, because three of you I've never played with before,
Right.
and so I thought it was the best way to introduce the three of you to a new game set. Actually, all four of you, because my other player, who's been with me now for over 3 years, he never played Shadow Dark before. So, I think that was the best way to introduce the game system as well, was
Absolutely.
to kind of limit the structure of what you're going to be exposed to very early on. So let's see, Mercurius, I'll be right back in person. So levels don't feel real to me anymore. All right, yes. So let me get back to the next banner. I think that we're on 3. So form or elicit inspiration for a theme for your campaign. It is best to get inspiration from your prospective players' input. All right, so this latter part, of getting inspiration from your player player input was something that just happened, 2 weeks ago, where I was asking, and it might even have been you. I forget who was going to come over into my Fallout campaign. It was either you or one of the others. I can't think of who it might have been, but he said that he's willing to he's willing to come into the Fallout campaign, but he really doesn't like the Commonwealth setting, right? So the Boston setting.
Yeah.
And so that made me think, well, let me think about what other settings there might be out there, and so I said, well, let me look to see what other vault locations there are. And it wasn't even on an official listing of vaults, but it was taken from a screenshot of the background of the Amazon TV series, right? Where they said, hey, there's a vault in New York. And then when I started searching for it, I was like, yeah, somebody had taken that map and expanded it, and it put it somewhere near Oneonta, New York. So I was like, there we go.
Yeah.
It's going to be a vault in Oneonta, New York. And then I started researching the town and what was around there. And then I found that there's a website that does Pip-Boy images of real world locations.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I got a Pip-Boy image of Oneonta, New York. And so bang, that went into place. And then I was like, all right, let me make sure that I don't pick a vault that anyone else has already used. And I didn't find 67. So, and 67 is my birth year. So I was like, you know what? Vault 67. And it just started piecing together. And I was like, all right, so what is this vault's purpose going to be? And then I had to set it into the timeline. And all of that was inspired by the one sentence, I really don't like the Commonwealth setting, and it is someplace else. And that put me on to writing a whole campaign setting, basically. And I just spent the last 3 days of suffering through and just putting it all together. And that brings me to the next step, that because now that I have that inspiration, I go into my step 4 here. Assume the players know nothing about the game system and craft an introductory adventure that will teach them the basics as they go. So once I have a sense of my players, the player characters in the group, then I will look at the introductory adventure that I'll be crafting at the same time, and I'll start saying, well, given that this character has, let's say, a medic background, well, I'm going to make sure that there's a med kit here or there, or some kind of a use of their skills. all right, specifically so that every single character, as they're going through that introductory adventure, will have an opportunity to use the skills that their characters have selected. All right. Now they might not get to all of them in the introductory, but they'll get a good sense of it. Um, so your experience on doing things like that as well.
Yeah, well, I'm reminded of our first session in our Shadow Dart game.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the first dungeons we went into was the Eroding Isle,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an incredible primer for what the rest of the game entailed. Um, it really kind of gave us not only just like the general gist of how the rule system works, but
Mm-hmm.
also things like keeping track of the torch time,
Mm-hmm.
keeping track of our resources. You know, me coming from a 5e background, being Superman and at level 1,
Mm-hmm.
there was a bit of an adjustment, and it was
Right.
awesome. Like, we had a great time. And I really enjoyed it. It was interesting for me to introduce a bit more of a toned down system to my fifth edition group,
Mm-hmm.
and I made sure I was very adamant with them, saying like, okay, we need to kind of cover all our bases. We need one of each of the four main classes,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it's very important, you know.
Yeah.
And they had those opportunities where, you know, I kind of gave them a little bit of a nudge, saying, "Hey, why don't you try this?" But I mean, it really fit the group like a glove,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And
it was great.
yeah, I think focusing on making sure that there's the four core classes,
Hmm.
like that began with tabletop role playing games,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
it got to video games,
Hmm.
but I think it's much more, it's much more, popularized and also sometimes looked down upon when you talk about the Holy Trinity, right? You need your
Yeah,
brass cannon, you need your tank, and you need your healer,
yeah.
your healer bot, but that originated with Dungeons and Dragons,
Hmm.
all right, and just the concept of you need a fighter, a mage, a cleric, and a thief in order to do almost everything that they're going to encounter in a dungeon crawl,
Hmm.
and that really is the basis of Dungeons and Dragons, is the dungeon crawl concept,
Hmm.
and Shadow Dark is definitely a throwback to that
Yeah,
whole concept of, yeah, you're doing dungeon crawls in Shadow Dark, and it takes a bit to make them interesting and different from one another, and that's the
hmm,
biggest challenge, I think, is to add enough nuance between one dungeon and another in order to make it so that you guys don't get, bored
yeah,
with, oh, geez, we got to go into another dungeon.
yeah.
No, it's really incumbent upon me to make each of them a much more unique experience, and to because the characters and the character classes are so slimmed down
Hmm.
in Shadow Dark, you have to go beyond what the character sheet says.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what a good open system will do, is because I don't have to see, well, is there a specific ability that you have so
yeah.
that you do this thing? No, I'll just say, well, you want to do this thing, and all I have to do is, well, that's an attribute check,
Yeah.
and
Oh, we had a situation like that. So we there was sort of like a social interaction inside of the dungeon where the party parlayed with a bunch of uh, a bunch of sheep-headed fawns. There's this
Mhm.
really kind of weird interaction,
Right.
and one of the players asked to make like an insight check. I'm
Hmm.
like, this game really isn't like that. You go ahead and make your assumptions and act
Hmm.
accordingly. You
Right.
feel free to trust your gut, trust your
Hmm.
instincts. I'm giving you the information that is
Yeah.
there. You go ahead and make that
Yeah.
conclusion, and they
Yeah.
made the right conclusion. You know, the sheep-headed fawns were going to poison them and eat their flesh, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Best just tell them, hey, just role play it out.
Yeah.
And use that term role play. Because I think that, and I fall into this trap sometimes too, as long as I've been doing this, and yet I still fall back to thinking about game mechanics instead of just role playing it through.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you will see that I try to keep on encouraging. It's nice to have a small group, to do that as well. But, just role play will solve everything. It will allow you to do things that are beyond what the character sheet tells you. And I think that's very, very important. But you need a very simple system in order to do that. And I think that's why some people will say a class level system role-playing game is harder to role play than a skill-based system. All right, because a class-based, level-based system ties you to that character sheet, whereas a skill system allows you to expand. And I'm starting to realize that. I'm starting to see how you can make that. It's not even a leap. It's a how you can make that step in thinking about the way game systems influence role play versus those that stifle role play. And it's one of the reasons why, like when I'm working on, doing my Fallout, I printed out the sheet that has all the skills. So now when I'm looking there, I can look at a room, let's say, and I'm starting to populate the room, and then I'm starting to ask, well, what skills can come into play in this room? All right, whether the players have it or not, they might have zero skill in it, but they could still attempt it. Yeah. All right. So, and that's the flexibility. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
That's the flexibility that comes from a second generation, because that's the other thing I started looking into is, because I've heard this thrown around, there's different generations of role-playing games.
Sure,
and I was like, all right, let me see what exactly. I wanted to get kind of a strict definitions of them, and a class level-based system is a first generation. And then a skill-based system is a second generation. And then third, and like fourth was silly. It was like no rules, no dice rolls, no anything, and a third was not a combination of 1 and 2 or an expansion of 1 and 2. It was like a third was, pulling from, wasn't touching the first at all. So it's like, well, you could still do third generation and still have some class and level abilities in there. So it was like, so that was a little bit of a weird one. And like I said, fourth was just,
gonzo, no rules.
Yeah, like no rules, no dice, no, that's a storytelling game. That's a story gaming, and that's not what I'm going to get into. Yes, role play, not role play.
That is one of my favorite things when I was first getting into Castles and Crusades. Is that primer they put in the front of the book where it talks about that specifically. That, coming from a 5th edition background, there were so many times where I would, both as a player and as a game master, I would want to approach a certain situation with a role play approach, and the DM would just say, okay, go ahead and make an ability roll. And the roll would fail, so it didn't matter how much effort I put in. It was going to fail anyways. And being the DM, where I bring sort of a social interaction, and a player just says, okay, I make a persuasion roll, it just kind of knocks the wind out of the sail, so to speak. So that's a big deal.
But I will say one thing, Bo, is that you can role play in D&D. You know,
Mhm.
I hate to, I hate to break it to Shonner, you know, but you can role play in D&D. All you have to do is get the player off of their character sheet,
Mhm.
so, and then once you get them started on that, and granted, it starts at lower level, all
Yeah.
right, before their character sheet. I'm not talking about fifth edition because
Yeah.
fifth edition is too complex of a system, even at first level, to really get you off that character sheet. You have too many different actions and reactions, and there's just too much of a an action economy
Mhm.
going on in that system. But if you're going OD&D, or D&D back me,
Yeah.
those characters are simple enough that you don't even need to look at your sheet in order to do a lot. Their biggest drawback, I think, is the combat matrix. Having to look to see whether or not you hit
Mhm.
that armor class is a real drag, which
Yeah.
I like Castles and Crusades so much better
Mhm.
than that. And one of the things I might do with my Castles and Crusades campaign is I might adopt the magic casting system from Shadowdark to Castles and Crusades, because I think that's an improvement, as well. So get completely away from the Vancian,
Yeah.
system, and allow you to cast until you fail casting that spell, and
Mhm.
then you can't cast that spell again for the remainder of the day, until you pray for it, or I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Just
Rememorize those spells.
right.
Kind of going back to the role play versus ROLL play.
Mm,
There was a scenario where basically there were these two guards that were standing, or these two soldiers that were standing guard in a place, and the party wanted to send the bard to go try to persuade those
mm,
guards. On paper, that bard, that high charisma character, is probably going to have a better chance, like mechanically, but we had a fighter with a soldier background.
mhm,
It would make a whole lot more reality sense for that soldier fighter to go have a conversation.
mm.
And had they done that, there wouldn't even need to be a roll. We would have just role played it out and let the cards fall where they may.
Mm.
But that's the difference between role playing and ROLL playing.
Right. Uh, to Decato's point, all right, so it has some variant magic systems, and then um, Ironcaster brought up that CNC has a mana point rules over spell slots, and yes, that's true, but you still have to track the number of mana
Mm-hmm.
points, which I find to be cumbersome, and you don't have to do that with Shadow Dark's magic system,
Yeah.
where when Castles and Crusades, or when Troll Lord Games releases their spell cards, now all you need to do is have your spells that you've memorized for the day in front of you, and you're going to cast that spell as often as you can without failing your spell casting roll. If you fail it, you turn it over. You no longer have access to that spell. You don't have to track mana points. You don't have to see, oh, how many slots do I have? How many times can I cast this? It's just a much more streamlined system. And to have those spell cards, which I'm dying for, and I might even take credit for having suggested them, because I've said it over and over for like the last 6 or 8 months. You need to do spell cards. You have the equipment pack
Yeah.
cards. Why
Yeah.
don't you have spell cards, for Christ's sake? So they did mention in a tweet that yes, the spell cards are coming, and I think it's because we made a big enough case that it was like, oh, we're gonna buy, I'm gonna buy a set for me of every single pack and a set for my players, and so it's like you're gonna get 2 or 3 sets, for
Mm-hmm.
every single gaming table going out there. So it's but I think that would be a much better and easier system to use than the current mana point system as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bo, I am a GM. The players tell me what they want their characters to do, choose the appropriate skill and positive modifiers. I assign the negative modifiers, if any, and the dice roll. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a target number system, all right, which is the hallmark for second generation. All right, the second generation RPG is skill based and target numbers, and that is what that is essentially what THACO was as well. It was a target number system. It just overcomplicated describing
Yeah.
it instead of just saying, hey, yeah, if someone has an armor class of 15, you need to roll a 15 to hit it.
Yeah.
It's
It was just a little bit more mental
simple.
gymnastics.
And add your modifiers and whatnot. And Castles and Crusades, again, improved on that, by just saying, yeah, based on your level. So it eliminated the to hit chart completely and just said, fighters get a +1 for every level that they have. Magic users get a +1 for every 4th level or whatever. And that just gets applied to their attack rolls. So fighters will always still be easier to hit their targets than a magic user, but neither of them have to look at a chart to see that. It's already built into the target number versus what you have to roll, and much simpler system. So it eliminates the Mother May I.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's
speaking of Shauner.
Yes, yeah, and again, I agree with him in that you're really kind of skirting the idea of not talking through the rules of the game when you're playing. It's only your characters and what your characters know.
Yeah.
All right, what they can see, smell, and hear and feel is what the game master is telling them, and then how they react to that is what the players are. They have full agency over that. And when they're asking, well, can I do something? Now they're breaching that line between player knowledge and character knowledge, because only a player would ask that. Who's the character asking that to? Are they sitting there thinking, can I climb that? No, they wouldn't actually do that unless they're very dramatic, as their personality. And then they would just do it. But yes, it does eliminate the Mother May I. And that is something that broaches that, or I should say breaches that that construct of role playing and the separation between player and player character. I think is really something that's very, very important. It's something that I really latched on to in like the 4th or 5th session that I was doing in my AD&D campaign, when actually it might have been a little bit later than that. It was probably like the 12th session or so I had, and I'll give this I'll give this explanation out. So my players were had their characters in Keep on the Borderlands, and they were in the Caves of Chaos, and it was the first time that they ever encountered were-rats. And it was the first time that the player character ever encountered were-rats. And so he tried to do was speak with animals.
Oh.
And so he asked to speak with animals to speak to the were-rat. And I said, well, you cast your spell, but it didn't work. All right. You can't speak to him in animal or in rat speak or whatever you were. You go, well, why not? And I said, because a were-rat is not an animal. It's a monster.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my character would know that because he would understand his spell. I says, your character had never encountered a were-rat before, and he had never cast that spell before. I said, so this is a learning experience. Your character has now just learned, and you'll never have to make that mistake again, because you will understand why your spell did not work in that case. And he was getting kind of like upset about it. Like he was, and I said, listen, where at speak common. It was like you
Yeah.
talk to them in common. It was like you didn't need to do this, but we totally broke out of player knowledge and
Hmm.
and got into this little debate. It didn't last long. It lasted like a
Sure.
couple of minutes, and the rest of the group was like, the DM said it, let's move on,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then I had a conversation with him later, and I said, no, this is what mindset I want you to have. What would my character know?
Hmm.
All right. And only based on your character's experience. Now, 6 months from now, if you come across a situation that you forgot you did as a player, you forgot your character had this, I will remind you of what your character knew, and so that's permissible within the guidelines, because yes, you're going to forget, what did my character do 8 months ago, and so I will cross that line to just remind you, hey, your character would know this,
Hmm.
kind of thing, and then move on from there. So it's I think it's a really important thing to create that separation between player and character. That way you have less metagaming.
Hmm.
And that's the key, I think, to role playing, is to eliminate metagaming.
Yep. It's about fostering that immersion so that
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about those things.
Hmm. Yeah. So, hey, need more cowbell. Blah. Mana points is my preferred magic system. Check out Shadow Dark's magic system, and you may change your mind on that, because there's no tracking. There's
Hmm.
only tracking when you fail a spell. That's the only tracking you have to keep track of. Is, oh, I failed that spell, I can't use it anymore for the rest of the day. They need to do spell cards for Amazing Adventures too. They're rewriting Amazing Adventures to make it OGL, or stripping the OGL out of it. And so Jason Bay has been talking about that, and that is in the works. So there will be a new printing, because they don't do editions in Troll Lord games. They'll be
Hmm.
doing a new printing of Amazing Adventures sometime soon. Hey, Off Grid, how's it going?
It's a fellow Shadow Darkling.
Fellow Shadow Darkling, yes. So we see Paul Bacleda. Welcome. Not sure if you've been here before, but if you haven't, welcome. And if you have, good to see you again. Oh, excuse me. Lovely, lovely. And this is my second time having it, so it should,
Oh,
it should be a little less severe than the first time.
it's never fun.
It's probably about the same. Played the Savage Worlds version of Rifts as a spellcaster. The GM utilized chips, which were already part of the mechanics for SW, to track mana and mana magic boosts, easy and tactile management. Yes, I mean, if you're using chips to keep track of your mana points, that makes it a lot easier than trying to keep track on a sheet of paper. And like you said, it's very tactile. It's very visual. Everyone can see at the table what you're doing. Even if you're doing it virtually, you can use some kind of counter that's visible to everybody. I don't mind tracking arrows, health potions, etc. You just use props. Yeah. If you're going to use visuals like that, it works out very well. Arrows, I guess you could sit there with 20 toothpicks for.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Matchsticks.
It's actually a good idea. I just literally thought of that now, and I was like, you know what? You could use toothpicks to keep track of your, arrows. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I might actually do that next time I'm playing a character with that's bow centric. All right, let's get back to here. So, assume the players know nothing. So step 5. So in my step 5, we finally get to session 0, right? And in session 0, I always give out the expectations, right? This is what I expect from the players when they're coming to the table, and this is what you can expect from me. I will hand out those basic rules handouts that I either generated or are just a couple key pages coming out of the rule book. We'll do character creation as a group, and I just got that idea from my coverage of Traveler, Mongoose Traveler Second Edition, where it kind of dispelled one of my concepts, or how I was looking at character creation from the book and the Traveler book compared to the online creation, which, yes, the online creation is fast and easy, right? I created a character in that video in like 10 minutes. All right. The book is going to take you an hour and a half, to actually go through and read and try to do that. However, the one thing that the book emphasized was creating characters together, at the same time. And that way, everyone at the table, and you could do this virtually as well. You just do it on a Zoom or whatever, and you have everybody there. And as they're creating their characters, they're describing, well, this is what all of my characters' characteristics are, what their attributes are, what their weapon, armor, and, whatever skills that they might have. And when everyone's hearing that in real time, they're starting to get a sense of what the other characters' capabilities are. And now you have that as a starting point, like right off from the beginning, so that when you enter that first session, and you probably spent the last week talking to each other about the different characters, and that's what I really got from the Traveler rule book was every player at the table should know what everyone else's characters are and what their motivations are. And coming into Traveler really emphasizes this. They're coming into the situation knowing each other already. So there's no, when they have what's called a connections system where, how are they connected through their backstories? All right. Because Traveler does have more of a backstory history. They have a adventurer careers that they had, usually naval or army or Marines or university, kind of thing. And then they went into becoming travelers. And so you don't have to do that very awkward, you meet in a tavern. And how, even though there's ways to do that in unique ways, it's like what I did with your group is that once I started seeing in the Shadow Dark group that there was already 3 dwarves in the group, I was like, the 4th player coming in, I was like, if you roll a dwarf, if you create a dwarf character, now I can use that to have you all know each other, and it's very easy to explain and will make your groups kind of stand out. And Shadow Dark has a system where groups actually form, their own name, for the group and such, and it becomes a role-playing, element to the characters, and it gets back to that cohesion that I think that Shadow Dark really does create, very similar to Traveler, right? So Traveler does create that cohesion that you don't have in Dungeons and Dragons, let's say, because you can have people coming from all over the world, which never made very much sense to me. It's like, oh, I'm coming from Ket, and you're over here in Greyhawk, and it's like, well, how the heck do you travel 7,000 miles, at first level, and you're here now all of a sudden in some bar in Hamlet or something crazy like that. It's like, systems that have people already knowing each other makes much more sense. Now in my Mifrog campaigns, which, that's a real throwback to my early days of getting back into the hobby, and it's like one of those kind of semi-taboo games. On top of that, it's like it's designed where everyone's coming from the same village. It was like, and they're all like 15, 16, 17 years old, and it's like this is when they're going out into the world. and you start off with their first adventure is like a freaking boar hunt. It's
Yeah.
almost like a rite of passage kind of adventure that they're doing, and it starts off with that cohesion right away, and it's a much easier way to, again, bring the characters together. So session 0, expectations, basic handouts, character creation as a group, and then that allows me to mentally prepare for session 1 and make any tweaks to that step step 4 of the introductory adventure, and it allows the players to spend the next week talking with each other to say, hey, you know what, this is my character's background, and how can we intertwine this with maybe your character's background? Like, I'm a tailor, and you're an armor smith, and maybe through our families they work together a lot, and this is why I know how to do the inlining of armors, and then you're doing the quilting inside armors, and you're doing the armor part of it as well, and so that's how you can connect them up that way. Let's get to some more comments here. Kitchen matchsticks cut up for spells too. That's
arrows.
Yeah, or arrows or spells. I like toothpicks better. Sorry. Craft sticks are props for arrows. All right, your toothpicks. They're so much easier. Coming around to asymmetrical play, the group is higher level characters and his retainers. Yeah, so that's a whole different level of play, and that's the kind of level of play that you would see in Adventure Conqueror King, which is really, I think, built around that kind of system, and that gets back to that inspiration of what kind of a campaign do you want to have, and that might inform the game master of what system they're going to use. If my 5 or 8 players came to me and they said, hey, we want to do something that is domain kind of gameplay, all right, that is higher level gameplay, then that's the kind of system that I would go to, because it's designed to do that. I wouldn't do that with 5th edition.
Yeah.
That's insane level of power that you're dealing with.
At that point, you don't need a domain. You are the domain.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. But yeah. Now, I'm not fond of high level adventuring. I like to bring characters from 1 to 10 or 11 or possibly 12. And then I'm looking to throw, Tomb of Horrors at them, and see if they get through it. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of domain play. I'm not a big fan of going up beyond those higher level, high mid levels, let's say. It's one of the reasons why, like, even in computer games, World of Warcraft, I played more 1st to 20 level characters. I think I only played one character to like level 40 something. And I got tired of it and went back to just, I've probably played about 30 level 1 to 20 in that game. And only once gone beyond it. Quickly got bored.
Yeah.
With it going beyond there. So I've never liked high level play. Even as a player character, even as a player in my 1980s campaign with our one dungeon master, we actually utilized the Dragon magazines a lot for inspiration, and he let the 3 characters that survived the Tomb of Horrors proceed forward, and we actually survived through a lot of high level dungeons. Like we completed the Vault of the Drow. We completed the Demon Queen of the Web Pits. We we did Ravenloft with those characters. I mean, we were all over the place doing all these very high level things, and he let us become quasi deities. All right, which
wow.
was a system built in the, in the thing, and we ended up. But then once we became that, he was like, okay, you're all retired now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now you're a part of the pantheons, and you're going to roll up new characters. Now we played those characters for close to 10 years, and so it basically was like, well, we're off to college, we're off into the military, we're doing different things, and it kind of came to an end, but it came to a perfect end.
Yeah.
All right, and that was just the only time that I've ever played that high level characters, and I had no desire of doing it even as a player anymore. Is this a decent place to garner some knowledge?
I'd say so.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that, and
I'll say that anytime I'm looking for a new system or trying to find info on a new system, you've probably done a video going through page by page. But
yeah,
I think I'm pretty sure that's the way it was when I found out about Castles and Crusades. I
yeah.
just saved your playlist of all you going through the player's handbook and everything. I'm like, hey, this is some good info. I'll stick around.
Yeah, I try, Anthony. I try to cover a lot of different games. I think probably a greater variety than virtually anybody else out there, to be honest. And I really like just showing new game systems out there, and covering them. Maybe not as in depth as many. Like some, I just do like an intros and a couple things about them. But there's only a few game systems that I've made, like, Castles and Crusades, like 80 videos.
Yeah.
Shadow Dark, like 25, 26. That's
Mhm.
probably like one of my second highest. As far as playlists are concerned, AD&D first edition, I covered quite a few. Quite a few videos in there as well, because that's my go-to Dungeons and Dragons edition is AD&D First Edition. Yeah, you're just now trying to learn which game. So we spoke about like Shadow Dark, we spoke about Castles and Crusades, we spoke about, well, I just mentioned Axe. Yes, I'm waiting to see, like, he gave me Macra sent me a draft copy of it when I interviewed him, quite a number of months ago. I'm waiting for the thing. He just recently put out an update on where it is. I think it's ready to print, I want to say. So we should be getting it soon. A D&D. All right. So my suggestion, if you're brand new to Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to stick to 5e, I would recommend that you get the box set. Which one am I thinking of? The
Dragons of Icespire Peak.
No, the other. The experts one. What the heck is that called? The essentials. Get the essentials kit. Sorry, get the essentials kit. If you're gonna look at D&D 5e, the essentials box set, that's the best one of all the box set. The Stranger Things one is trash. All right, absolute trash. It is virtually unplayable. It's the most poorly designed adventure I've ever seen, and that should have been a re-release of the red box if they were going to be true to Stranger Things. But leave it to WotC to drop the ball.
So royally screwed up.
And the point is that they own the freaking IP, so it would have been nothing for them to reprint the red box, and it would have been a true homage to both Stranger Things and to their own freaking property. You know, it's like it just defied all common sense, but they
Mhm.
refuse to do anything that might take away from 5e. But I would do D&D Beck Me, and you can get just the book from like eBay. If you get it without the box and everything, you're just getting the booklet, you just get the first one, then it's only going to run you about $25 to get that. And that's everything you need to just run, the first two books. I'm sorry, it comes with a two-book set for the basic set. You could get the Rule Cyclopedia. Again, you can get that either on drive-through or on eBay as well. I try not to buy anything from drive-through that's Wizards of the Coast because they don't respect the product.
Mhm.
But that's just a personal thing of mine. If you're looking for a D&D-esque game system that is not officially D&D, then Castles and Crusades is great. You can get the white box that you see behind me there for $50, $40, something like that. You can get the
You can
core
get the Player's Handbook PDF for free. They still have
Yes,
that on
you
their
can get the
website.
Player's Handbook PDF for free, and that's all you need to be a player. And
Mhm.
then all you'd have to do is buy the treasures, Monsters and Treasures, if you want to be a castle keeper. The Castle Keeper's Guide, which is like the DM's guide, is not necessary for even being a DM or castle keeper in that system. You can get Shadow Dark. You
Mhm.
can get, Old School Essentials is another
One
great
that I
choice.
would recommend if you're wanting to get into like the old school, I have it right here. If you want to get into like old school style play,
Mhm.
I would recommend picking up a copy of Dragon Slayer.
Okay, yes.
Whatever you think of Greg Gillespie, he made a great game, or he
Yeah.
compiled a great game. It has, all of the mainline rules that you need to play
Mhm.
the game. It has a section for generating dungeons and generating loot, generating really
Mhm.
whatever you may need, and of course all the monsters and stuff. My
Right.
favorite part about it is it has like an OSR primer in the very back. So if
Right.
you've never played an OSR style game, if you're used to playing like modern games, it gives you a good primer. But yeah,
Yeah.
Dragon Slayer's
So
good game.
there's so many out there. You can get Osric. All right.
Oh
Basic
yeah.
fantasy role playing is another one that's like $5 or $6 for the soft cover, or it's a free PDF, and many of its other PDFs are free as well. That's another great, very easy to use system. Yeah, it's like 5e is probably one of the hardest D&D systems to learn from because the characters are just very complex,
Yeah.
and it's a
There's a lot.
complex action economy at first level, even first level. And most players don't even like to play at first level. They want to go jump right to fifth level, which is, almost the equivalent of like ninth or 10th in, real D&D. So it's it's not the best system to learn, to teach new players at. It really isn't. There's many, many other systems that are just better at doing that specific thing. So let's see what else we have here. Asymmetrical play eliminates all the mess of leveling up. Flunkies are flunkies until the guy above them gets killed. No bookkeeping. Okay.
Hey, Rich, I'm gonna hop off
Yeah.
here.
All right. You have a good one. Thanks for stopping
Thank you
in.
so much,
And
brother. Yeah, absolutely.
good seeing you. And as someone mentioned like very early on, they finally saw you in real. So it's good to see you. And we should be fine for next Saturday. That should be no problem at all.
Awesome.
If I'm still struggling with this next Saturday, knock on wood, that it should be gone by then.
Sure.
Hoping it's
Cool.
gone by Wednesday. All right. You have a good
Looking forward
one.
to it, man. Thank you, sir. You as
All
well.
right. Take care. So let's see. So Anthony, there are lots of others out here, worlds of RPGs. Yes, there's tons of them. All right, so let's see what else we had. Yeah, yeah, I would look at some of those other ones. I would look at some of those other ones. They're all very good, especially for new players. Not a Stranger Things fan, so no problem. Old School Essentials and Basic. Let's see. Yeah, Basic is a free PDF. There's lots of systems available. Or really, it applies. App depends on what your oldest is into. We'll recommend books for hours, but talk with the kiddo and find out what they really want to play. Yeah, and that's another thing that gets back to like my point on inspiration is some of the best input you're going to get is from your players or your prospective players, and they'll tell you what kind of game that they're looking to play, and then you'll look and find a reasonable one that will do that and meet that meet that expectation. Okay, so picked up the Ice Pirates Peaks Essentials and now some other stuff, but I will check out some of your other great. Hey, thanks a lot, Anthony. That's much appreciated, and I really welcome you to the channel, and you're welcome to come in and chat all that you like about what's going on and the various things. Check out, like I said, check out my channel for all the different game systems that I do cover, and I cover across many other genres as well. So this is the place to be, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to just boost myself a little bit there. This is a place to be to get a greater variety of both genre and game systems and even platforms, because I do talk about computer gaming as well, although not as often as this. And so yeah, that's phenomenal. So thank you. And Mercurius, as always, thank you again. And actually, I was all set to give out some free memberships as well. So I will, let me mute that. And let me give out the 5 free memberships. This is the last membership gifts that I have for this month. And so I am going to gift 5 of those now, and we'll see who gets those. Let's see. So Coco B, Rob Vecna, Juan Cholo, Gary Simeon, and the Ultra American TTRPGer. You have all been given a free gift of membership to the channel, and membership to the channel opens you up for getting in on my Discord channel in your own separate section as a member. It also allows you to jump in on any of my live plays, whether it be one shots or mini campaigns, just like my Shadow Dark campaign. And I will be starting up a Fallout campaign very shortly to bring in people for that as well. And you all that are members of the channel will have that opportunity to jump in on there as well. So so that's another benefit of the channel membership. Okay, let's get to my banners again. Let me just get this one sneeze out of the way, and let's see. So session 0, I left off with so this is the first this is the first step 6, right? So there's 2 parts of step 6. There's the GM's part, and then there's the player's part. So step 6A is a GM takes what was discussed in step 5, which was the session 0, and then adjusts the initial adventure to accommodate the character's class skills or skills, traits, or other features. So I like to, in an introductory adventure, give everyone an opportunity to use what skill their character has to an important outcome, right? So not just, hey, I'm a fighter, so I'm going to smack a couple bugs here. No, there's other things that fighters will have as part of their training that isn't necessarily on the character sheet, right? And so, fighters will have a better tactical advantage, let's say, in a combat situation, that I would have them draw upon their knowledge as a fighter and set up a situation where that will come in handy, and that will actually assist the players in working their characters together in order to achieve some goal, just based on that character's class skills, traits, or other features. And that other features means the unmentioned class training that they might have. Now, in a classless system, you have the skills that you can pull from. And in some cases, they have traits as well. And you don't have to use those as just a raw score number or a die modifier. You can use them as a base of knowledge. All right. And so that's where they're going to put that in. So step 6A is where I am tweaking that first adventure in order for the players to a new game system are going to get the most out of that first adventure. Now, for the players' part, during that same interim time in between session 0 and session 1, they're going to talk with one another. And they're going to hash out how the party is together, and that will help them, I believe, prepare them to role play their characters, not just as individuals, but role play as a party. And that, again, comes from the concept that I pulled from Traveler, as well as from Shadow Dark, which also creates that group dynamic. And I think that is really important. And I've actually experienced this in real time with my AD&D First Edition campaign player party group, which was at one time 10 players, and then it finally finished out with 8 players, and their characters literally knew the backgrounds of each other within the first, let's say, 12 to 16 weeks. They could say who had what in their backpack. They just knew each other's characters, and they even knew or had some expectations of how different characters would act in certain situations, especially situations that they had experienced prior to it. Now, I've actually had to play for a character, when a player was unavailable, and his character was integral to the quest that they were on, and so I had enough knowledge of the player character to play that character the same way that the player would have. I said, listen, I know how this guy would act in this situation, and he would not cast a spell. He's always been very stingy with his spells, and he's not going to jump in there with direct combat. He may throw a dagger into there, or a dart, but he's not going to do this. He might just sit there and wait and do nothing this round. And it was completely within the way that the player played that character through the first 25 sessions. So when I had to take over his character for like the last 5 or 6 sessions, I was playing his character pretty true to the way that he played his character. And so that's the kind of thing that you want your players not to control each other's characters per se, but to know what they can expect, that that character is going to react, in a certain way. And so it kind of allows them to predictably role play through the system, or through the situation, I should say, and kind of have those expectations of, well, I know he's going to probably do this, and so I'm going to start prepping to do this instead. And sometimes they're wrong, and sometimes that happens too, and that lends itself to the chaos of combat. So that's always a possibility as well. So let's see, two more comments. Hey Cal, how's it going? And Chubby, hey Chubby, first time I'm seeing you, so welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, your wife fell asleep, so now it's time to listen to some good stuff. Well, that's it's good to have you here. And what I've been going through right now is I've been going through and talking about some of my step-by-step process of tips of creating a new campaign, especially with a new game system as well. So I'm almost done with actually the list of tips, but we'll still do somewhat of a wrap up as well. So hopefully you'll be able to catch up. What I'll do is I'll display the step by step through as like a summary, going through near some point near the end. And yes, all of the welcomes to Chubby Funster. And let's see. So I finished up with this banner here. So chat with each other. Players are chatting with each other between session 0 and session 1. And then finally, pregame. This is the last step in my process. So pregame, I spent about 30 minutes, or allow the players to hash out with me any questions that they have before the actual start of session 1. And then we start the scene. Session 1 may be more GM focused with a narration or lore dumps, but this must shift to character focused beyond session 1. All right, so that's kind of important. So yeah, that was just the TV going on, and I don't want the background noise to get me a copyright strike. So, so step 7, pregame, about 30 minutes just to hash out any of those questions that the players might have of me before we actually start playing. And then once we start playing, the scene begins, right? So you start the scene, and now you should no longer be in player mode. You should be in the player character's mindset. And that's a really important thing. And it is a struggle. It really is a struggle. I admit it. I sometimes fall out of it, as a game master, and, players will sometimes fall out of it as players. But the more and more you emphasize role play, the more and more you emphasize for the players to think as their characters and not as themselves, and to separate player knowledge from character knowledge, to try to eliminate metagaming as much as possible, and to get them off their character sheets and into just thinking about what would their character do in this scene. All right, how are they going to react to what they see, smell, hear, feel, and whatnot, and just talk in the first person. All right, players are talking in the first person through their characters. I am going to go do this. Or they can talk in the third person. Let's say the ranger's name is Almeric. All right, Almeric is going to the door, all right, and or goes to the door. Actually, even better, Almeric goes to the door and he opens it up. All right, and that is a direct, a direct action. Uh, doesn't typically require any roll in order to do that action, and it is telling everyone exactly where Amalric is and where he ends up in that particular action round. All right. And then we deal with the consequences of opening up the door or the attempt to open up the door. And that's where that comes in. So moving players out of the mindset of being a player and into the mindset of being the character is the goal. And like I said, it's a struggle. All right. And I just showed you that kind of struggle there when I says he is going to go. All right. That's offsetting when he does it. So you have to be a lot more definitive about what your character is doing. And you'll let any impediments to what his action is be something that the game master introduces, while he's doing it or while he's attempting it. So you assume that you're going to walk across the room and get to the door. And the DM will allow or disallow that for whatever reason. You might trigger a trip, a pit trap on the way to the door. That doesn't negate your being in character. All right, and that's, I think, the most important part of this is to be in character right from the start of the scene, and then once the game session is over, you can go back to that mode of talking between the player and the game master, and you could talk about rules that might have came up that there was some, issue with, and so that's a better use of the time. So that's another thing for the game master to really build in the expectations portion of session 0 as well. You lay it out that, hey, we'll spend about 30 minutes before the game session, sometimes even less, before we start, if you have any questions, and then we'll do kind of like an after action review. After the game session is over, if you have any questions, but during the game session, we really want to avoid talking about game mechanics or game rules or anything. Let's just let the story unfold as you make decisions for your characters and move through the development of your adventuring in your character's perspective. So definitely not my first time. I tend not to be around when you're live. All right. Thank you very much. So great. Yeah, this was kind of an impromptu live as well. But I usually do lives on like Thursday nights at 8 p.m. I try not to step on other channels that do live streams, but everybody seems to do like an 8 o'clock live stream. So it's kind of impossible not to step on anybody's toes, but it is what it is. And, this has been a great live stream. I really enjoyed going over everything. Had somebody come in and join in the chat as well, one of my players. So it was great to have him in here and talking about some of his experiences as well. And we will go through what kind of questions do they usually ask during this step? Is there a common trend? I have players that will ask me questions about whether or not they can use a certain spell in a certain way. So, like my Castles and Crusades group, they're in a dilemma. One of the characters just got petrified by a Medusa's gaze, and so the magic user is debating whether or not to teleport himself back to the city, back to the School of Magic, and then teleport back to back to the location with a scroll or a potion for stone to flesh. Now, the teleport is not within his level limit, and so he would be casting a spell beyond his level limit, which has certain downsides to it, obviously. And then his other suggestion was, and this is not happening in game, this was happening after session. He says, well, what if I send my familiar, which is an owl, to fly back and, kind of do the same thing? And I will speak through my familiar with my contact back at the School of Magic and return back with a scroll with that on, and then I would have to obviously calculate how long will that take, and are they in a situation where they can wait that long, the advantages. And this is all a discussion I'm having with him before we actually begin the next session, on Tuesday. And so we'll see which way he wants to go. The advantage of teleportation is that it's practically instant. He'll be back within an hour or so. Not that the teleportation takes that long, but just getting, making contact and getting the, what he needs might take that long to do. But the flying the owl, the distance that it has to fly, we're looking at about a week. And for them to stay in the particular area that they're in the Dark Chateau, which is a Robert Kuntz adventure, and it's not the safest of places to be in. And so the idea of spending a week there, I think he would decide to use the spell route, even though it has potential downsides to it. It's a matter of risk assessment. Or they have a third option, is to just leave the character in his current state and move forward without him. Now, the problem is that he's the only cleric in the group. But if they move without him, they can certainly choose to do that as well. And we'll see. I mean, they may be watching, so I'll say we'll see what they decide, as far as, Tuesday night's game. So that's the kind of questions that come up, is, whether or not they can do certain things that is not taking away from game time. Oh, nice. I'm glad that that's how you found it too. And that's something, I guess the keyword tips is what triggered that algorithm. So yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you found it. Yeah, please do consider subscribing and hitting the alerts, so you'll get additional videos popping in there as well. I've been averaging, since I've been sick and kind of quarantined to my room, I've had a lot of time to actually do videos over these next couple of days. So we'll see that you'll see quite a lot of content coming out the next couple of days as well. So finished the game session just a few hours ago. Well, cool. And has what game system is it, Tandemar? And and how'd it go? I mean, how was it? Was it an early game session, or a an ongoing event that you've been doing, campaign that you've been running? Well, it's great to hear, Anthony, and thank you very much for your very kind contribution to the channel as well. And as always, your questions and your comments and such are welcome. So let's see. Oh, so Beckme set in Vistara. I'm going to show you something. I don't mean to make you jealous, but I have my player's manual here. So last January, I finally met Frank Metzner in person, and he actually knew of me because we've actually been speaking with each other since roughly 2016ish, when he was trying to do his Kickstarter, and I was actually working with him on a section of the Kickstarter, basically creating like a pirate haven, a city, a port city that was run, exclusively by pirates. And we were talking over the phone, we were talking over DMs and whatnot on Facebook, and then all of a sudden, the you know, the Kickstarter ended for reasons that I'm not going to go into, but and for all of these years since then, I've always been a big supporter of him, and we've talked back and forth. And I've invited him on my channel, and he's been reluctant about going on to YouTube channels since then, because he doesn't want to attract any negative attention to the channel. But in January at the Philadelphia Area Game Expo, I finally got the opportunity to meet him in person, and to not only meet him in person, but I got to sit down with him at a table before his first event and speak with him for about an hour and a half. And then I attended his event, and then later on that day I played in his game, and so here I have his sign, he signed my copy of it for Rich Bluddworth. Best wishes, Frank Metzner, page 2024. And it is now one of my most cherished items in my collection. He also signed my expert book, and hopefully, I know he's struggling with a kidney failure. So Godspeed to him and his recovery of health. Hopefully everything goes fine, and hopefully he does attend page 2, which is next January. But if he doesn't, it is my hope that he's still remains recovering, and just fights through it. And so really hoping that whether he gets to the game convention or not, if he does, I'm definitely going to drop whatever I'm doing to get into one of his games again. But it's, I think, really important for us to keep these old games alive. So it's great to see that you are running BECME, and you're running it set in Mystara. And BECME is by far my first choice to introduce new gamers to tabletop role-playing in general, and to Dungeons and Dragons more specifically. I think it is the best version of the game to introduce players to it. So it's great to see that you're doing that. Excuse me. Sneeze. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So it's an ongoing campaign, been there for years. Okay. So that's awesome too. My last BECME campaign lasted about 8 months, maybe 10 months, and then we moved right to my AD&D campaign, and that lasted for 2 years and 2 months. And then we moved to Castles and Crusades, and that now has been going on for about 31 weeks. And then I've thrown a few other game systems in there as well. Let's see, I missed a thing here. My son just started high school, went to a D&D club on Friday for the first time. 75% females, all 5e players. He used to play Shadow Dark and X2, finds 5e to be too easy. Maybe he can introduce them to the OSR. Yeah, he should definitely try to introduce them to to Shadow Dark. I think that would work out best. Um, I think they'll find an easier transition. Um, yeah, the games or games in general have really changed. Where there are a lot more females playing than there was back in the 70s and 80s, and that's for sure. No, I have the pleasure of having a female player in my group, and she's been there for a little over 3 years. And even before I came back to tabletop role playing, I've had female players in uh, in MMOs for years upon years on that as well. Yeah, there are. It didn't seem like that in the 70s and the 80s that there were a lot of women playing games. I don't think that there were. That has certainly grown, certainly from the 90s on forward. Slides in the back of the chat. Not late at all. Yep. Hey, Flint, how's it going? So let's see. I remember when Frank was kicked off on the forum called Dragon's Foot. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to get into it. It was, it was all BS. It literally was. And the fact that his chief accuser had been fired from like 3 companies for making the same kind of unfounded accusations kind of tells you a lot. But, the taint still stuck to Frank, and they weren't willing to let him back in even after she had shown the propensity of doing that kind of a thing, because he's just the old guard, and both Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, I mean, they've spoken a number of times that they really have no space for us old school gamers any longer, and certainly not the people, the legendary creators back from the earliest days of TSR. All right, so let's see. It would be nice to see Frank bounce back. My DM caught up with him at EggCon. Yeah, and that was just recently, and that's probably one of his last, at least until he recovers from this. Good to hear that his experience with a certain person didn't drive him out hiding permanently. Yeah, it did take him off the trail for quite some time, though. But it would be nice for him to, obviously recover from the situation he's dealing with now, and and to get back to, what he really loves, and that's running games. I mean, it was just a phenomenal experience. I just put up a video talking about that because it was like my greatest, player experience, and that was it. Was playing in his game, and so I encourage you to look at that video and see, just to kind of see my experience with him, and just how amazing it was to sit right next to him while he ran, his adventure. And it was both, eye-opening and very inspiring to see how he had everyone at the table, and there was 16 players. He had everyone at the table eating out of his hand, and both young and old. That it was really, really impressive. Okay, so let me get ready to wrap this up so I can take some other medicines and kind of try to rest up a little bit. So so I finished up with step 7. So the post game chat and whatnot, and it was a so these are my 7 steps, and so if you're coming on kind of late, this will be available fairly shortly, and you'll be able to see those step by step. So I'm going to go down and summarize the steps as I mentioned. So these are my 7 steps, and step 6 has 2 different parts for tips for creating a campaign for new game systems, and some of these apply to older game systems as well, ones that you and your players are familiar with. Assemble your components. Starter kits, I think, work really, really well for initially introducing players to new systems, and you as well. You as a game master, if you're looking to game master a new system for yourself, the starter kit is really, really helpful for doing that. Then find and print or create a basic rules on a quick reference page that you can hand out to the players as well. So now they have a couple days, or even just 20, 30 minutes to just look over the game rules. Some game systems are very, very easy to absorb, like Deathbringer, which is Professor Dungeon Master's only a 2-page rule set. Knave has a very simple 2-page layout, I believe, of the rules. Shadow Dark has it's a 4-page layout, but when you put it landscape, you can get all 4 pages on just one page, and you can hand that out to them, and they have every bit of rules that they would need for that system. And then other games have just like a rules compilation, very, very simple. Basic rules. Bloat Games does that for their Survive This series, as well as Basic Fantasy, I believe, has a quick reference chart as well. Then step 3 is to form or elicit inspiration for a theme for your campaign. It's best to get the inspiration from your prospective players' input. I have found this out, what's the word for it? I found this out recently with my Fallout campaign, which was really derived and developed from just one question or one statement from one of my prospective players, who said he really didn't like the Commonwealth setting of the Fallout role-playing game, being in the Commonwealth, basically Massachusetts area. And that really spurred me on to look for someplace different. And I ended up with Oneonta, New York, as being the starting location. And that really opened up a lot of inspiration for me to develop a whole new setting, a whole new area for them to begin their adventuring in. Step 4, assume the players know nothing about the game system and craft an introductory adventure that will teach them the basics as they go. Step 5 is session 0, expectations. That's where I will explain to the players what my expectations of the game sessions will look like. And then I will, inform them what they can expect from me as the game master. I'll give them the basic rules handout, character creation as a group, which is something that I derived from the Traveler RPG, 2nd edition RPG, which really talked about the benefits of creating characters, at that time. And you can check out my Traveler video where I kind of focus in on that aspect very early on in that video. So you'll see what I'm talking about and see what they kind of, really suggested, and why they suggested doing character creation as a group at one time. The GM and the players then think on what everyone's characters are like and mentally prepare for session 1. Step 6A is the GM's portion. Excuse me. Take what was discussed in step 5 and adjust the initial adventure to accommodate the character's class skills, traits, or other features. And other features could be anything about their character, which might be, focused on during that initial adventure. So give them an opportunity to shine in an area that might not necessarily be on their character sheet. It could be just something as a background that they mentioned about their character. Maybe they're a big baseball fan, and so there's a signature bat that they find that they choose to, utilize now as their starting weapon. And so that is a way to really get the player immersed into his or her character, as well as immersed into the game world. And then on the player's part, it allows them to chat between session 0 and session 1, talk about how their characters are going to come together, and not just as individual role players, but as a party role play as well, which I think is an important aspect. It's talked about in Traveler, and it's also talked about in Shadow Dark as well, is that kind of group dynamic, that group adhesion, and the group persona as well. And then finally, step 7 is both pre-game and post-game discussion about any kind of player questions for the game master, and then an explanation that once the game session begins, you start the scene, and now you're in the zone of the players are not themselves anymore. They are their player characters. Their characters are going to generate the action. Now, in session 1, there might be more GM focused with narration or lore dumps, but this must shift to character focused beyond that first initial session. So you should try to, as a game master, limit the amount of narration and info dumping you're doing, especially in large blocks of info dumping. You want to just let the scenes unfold as the player characters are experiencing them, and keep it just to basically the 5 senses that they have. What do they see, smell, feel? What can they touch in the room? And and so on. What do they hear? What kind of sounds do they hear coming from the room? And I'm really utilizing this as I'm creating my Fallout campaign and that introductory adventure. I'm thinking about what are the player characters sensing through their 5 senses when they walk into each room. How are they kind of different from one another? You know, if there's lights with that are flickering or fluttering, they're going to hear that, and I'll say, you not only see the lights flickering in here, but you kind of hear them clicking on and off. You hear a strange buzzing sound coming from it, and the room is either very hot or very cold. The climate control in this space might be different from the last room you had left. And so just hitting them up with all of the different things that their characters are seeing, feeling, and hearing and sensing, and let them take up the action from there. So very, very little narration from the GM as much as possible, just to set the scene and then let them roll with it. And so that's basically the summary of what I was covering through this. We're coming up almost on the 2-hour mark, so that's kind of perfect timing as well. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I thank everyone for stopping in, and great to see. For those of you that so for Be Curious, as always, thanks for the generous gifts of awarding memberships to people. Anthony, if you're still here, thank you very, very much for your contribution to the channel. That's much, much appreciated. And all of these funds do find their way back to the channel, as far as content and everything. I buy other game systems. I've been hearing a lot about Cairn, and so this will be something that I can use towards picking that up as well. And then Be Curious, you gifted another, so thank you very much. And then for the 5 recipients of my monthly free 5 for the second half of August, please take advantage of all of those things. Everyone, make sure you head over to my Discord. You can get to my Discord. It's an open channel, so you can go to my Discord, and you can get there through the description of this video and any other videos on there There's a link directly to my Discord. You can also follow my channel on X, or Twitter if you prefer, as well as on Facebook. It's called On Screen Gaming, OSG, at Facebook, so you can find me there as well. And if you're just passing through and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please feel free to subscribe and hit the alert button so you'll see when new videos are going to hit. I've been going through the RPG a day. I just wrapped up the 18th installment, so I'm on track now, on pace now. There will be one again tomorrow, as well as some shorts. I've been doing a video tour of my of my collection behind me. As you can see, I've been covering Bloat games for the last couple of videos. There'll be a few more of Bloat games moving forward, and then I will get to shelf number 7, which, looking over my shoulder, is going to be my second edition shelf, or primarily my second edition, AD&D second edition shelf. So be on the lookout for those as well over the next couple of days. If not 2 weeks, I'll certainly be into my second edition shelf. So you'll have a great one, everyone. Enjoy the remainder of your weekend and have a great weekend coming forward. And thanks for stopping in.